Chloe, what did you make of what you heard there? Because you were, I think you're someone, correct me if I'm wrong, that was sort of on the fence about reform in general. Has that changed your mind at all?
Well, I have been a reform convert for quite some time, but I was
Yeah.
maybe one of the later people in the run up to the general election to decide to switch. The argument is we're never going to end up with PR realistically, as much as Nigel Farage and the other Reform MPs may bang on about it and say there's a demand for it. Keir Starmer is absolutely no way going to allow a vote on PR because there's just no incentive for him to do so, right? So for me, and I think a lot of people, they're only willing to switch to reform if they genuinely can see that it is possible on a first past the post system for them to make waves. And I think, from what we heard from Lee there, he also wasn't convinced that under a PR system that we could possibly win a general election. Absolutely no way. But now the two main parties are performing so badly. I mean, we've seen the polling with Keir Starmer's government just absolutely plummeting faster than anybody expected.
Mm.
I think now we actually see a possibility of them either winning the 2029 general election or getting a very significant number of seats where perhaps they end up in a coalition. Who knows? So it's starting to look feasible now.
Yes. I mean, on that, Alex, the fact of the matter is, I mean, you've been pretty vocal about Rob Jenrick saying all the right things, but did you agree with what Lee had to say there about, well, it don't bloody matter because he ain't going to be able to do any of it in a wet party?
I mean, he's absolutely right about that. The most important thing that can happen to the Tory party is there's an exodus of the Liberal Democrats that currently fill up a vast majority of the Conservative Party, perhaps 50% of them. What will be really interesting is this race between Jenrick and Kemi, because all the wets are now flooding over to Kemi. So it will be telling about what's left of the party membership since the general election. If Rob can snatch victory, that might show there's a willingness from the grassroots to change the party. Lee's spot on. It has to come from the bottom up. But we also need to get rid of CCHQ and start again there. There's a lot of work that Jenrick would need to do in order to have a proper Conservative party. And I completely agree with Lee. But I will say this, and this is why I'm really vocal about Jenrick. I welcome real Conservatives back into the Conservative Party who are vocal about issues that Conservatives have. And I think I would be amiss. I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't vocalise support for someone who's doing that in the Tory party.
Eunice, do you buy it? Because some of the viewers there were sending in questions saying things like, oh, well, Robert Jenrick, he used to be wetter than they didn't quite couch it in these terms. This is my spin on it, but wetter than an otter's pocket. That actually he was a Cameroon Conservative. He was someone that campaigned alongside David Cameron to stay in the EU, telling us that there would be a DIY recession if we voted leave. Well, none of that happened. 1 million job losses, all these other scare tactics that they unleashed upon the British people. So do you actually buy that Robert Jenrick has had this political conversion?
No, I don't actually. And the more time goes on, the more I support Badenoch over Jenrick. I know
Oh,
last week I
wow.
said
I
I
wasn't
support
expecting you
Jenrick
to say
over.
that.
No, I mean, in the last week, first of all, I think Badenoch has really stepped up her marketing campaign the last week. I see a lot more videos on her recently. And as you said, I just think Jenrick is another career politician that flip-flops based on the way the wind is blowing, and I just don't like that kind of personality. But at the end of the day, I think Lee Anderson is correct. I don't think it really matters anymore. No one's really paying attention to the Conservatives like they used to, and as Alex said, 50% of their supporters are Lib Dems anyway. I really think the way forward for this country is for reform to be able to take over the Conservatives. I don't really see them doing a deal with reform, unfortunately, because of their ego. They think they're the bigger party. But that will be the downfall of the Conservatives if they don't manage to somehow do a deal or maybe persuade reform voters moving forward.
Yeah. The other story that Lee touched on, Eunice, was one that you were keen to talk about because you actually said that you disagreed with Nigel Farage on his point of, why can't we have an English manager? I actually think, fair enough to him because the Premier League is the best league in the world. If we can't find any talent within England itself, then Surely something's going wrong with grassroots football. They're too busy taking the bloody knee.
Yeah, that argument could be made, but look, we spoke about DEI time and time again on this podcast, and
Yeah.
this is a form of DEI. Why should it matter if it's an English manager? I thought it was all about competence. And Thomas Tuchel, I'm a Chelsea fan, and I remember
Well, he didn't
clearly
do that
when
good a
he.
job at Chelsea.
No, he did, and I think they shouldn't have sacked him because within 6 months of coming in, he managed to win the Champions League, and Chelsea were 10th. They
Yeah.
were 10th, and then he managed to finish top 4 and won the Champions League. And then the following year, he was sacked, which I didn't really understand. But I think he's a great manager. He is a little bit fiery on the fiery end, but maybe that's what England need, because I found Gareth Southgate a bit politically correct, as Lee Anderson said, even though he was done relatively well. I just didn't think he had the charisma and the personality to go that extra mile, and I think Tuchel has that.
Yeah. Chloe, does it bother you?
So I know very little about football. I admit I'm a
Yeah,
typical
but the
woman.
principle,
This is a man's hobby. But I am kind of okay with this. I think that we should, to some degree, prioritize English managers. But I mean, we know with football teams, they end up being made up with people from all sorts of countries. You know, they buy in players from different countries. Now, but what I'll say about this is, this to me is not the typical case of somebody foreign being chosen for a job because they're a DEI hire, right? This guy he's a white man, okay? Let's be honest. If they were looking for a DEI
true.
hire because they didn't like the Brits, I don't think he'd be just a typical German white man. So I reckon he was probably chosen for the job on merit.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, our good friend Alex on X says, to be fair, I don't mind the Tuchel appointment as long as he sings the national anthem. I mean, bloody hell, we're setting the bar pretty low here, but it's true. Some of them don't sing the national anthem. The last fella didn't.
Alex took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. Well, Alex took the words out of my mouth there. That's exactly what I was going to say. I want an England manager that sings the national anthem, shows some patriotism to the country, because that is a big part of this job. And I won't go back on my word on that one. But more importantly, I want a manager that's going to deliver us a win. You know, I don't really mind as long as they're good. You know, we always talk about DEI and all this stuff. Well, in this case, I'm merit based. I want the best person for the job. I don't care where they're from, but I do want them to show a little bit of love for this country. If you hate Britain and you don't want to sing the national anthem, then please do not be the England manager, even if you are the best person for the job. That's the only two requirements.
Yeah, I mean, it's depressing that we're at this point, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But Charlie then says also on X, says, having a foreign manager is insulting. The role is largely symbolic. What does this say about us? Well, actually, I think the manager themselves would argue that they ain't largely symbolic. You know, Tuchel apparently has a bit of a temper, and he's known for putting his players through the mill. And to be honest with you, I want them put through the mill because I think a lot of them are privileged prats who need to learn that they're there to do a job. They're not there to buy their Louis Vuitton luggage and then roll it out for the photo op. They're there to actually score some goals.
Yeah. Just quickly, Alex,
go
Pep
ahead.
Guardiola was the other option. So the other option wasn't English either. He was Spanish. So
well, there was Potter, there was Graham Potter and Eddie Howe,
managers.
but you can get your mitts off Eddie Howe.
But what I was just going to say is, you know, on Charlie's comment, I think, you know, that what does it say about us? I think it says that the FA are absolutely failing to deliver any talent, despite the hundreds of millions we pour into those organisations. And, you know, what is going on in there? They're like becoming like a civil service style organisation where they're too big to fail, and then they don't feel they have to worry about competition. That's what I think. You know, if I'm taking something away from Charlie's comment there, then we should really be investing in great British talent. We're the country that gave birth to the sport, for God's sake.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.